So, what did you have for breakfast today?
this coffee. I'll get lunch later.
Beautiful. Welcome to the Uncommon Podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Michaelides. We interview unique individuals and investigate interesting topics, helping you to build the uncommon sense crucial to increasing performance. Our guests have included venture capitalists, strength coaches, human rights lawyers, chefs, restaurateurs, and spoken word poets, just to name a few. And we're really inspired by the likes of Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, and Charlie Munger, who I think Charlie in particular has influenced us, always emphasizing that building worldly wisdom or that uncommon sense is critical for your growth as an individual. If you want to learn more about these previous guests, you can head to neuralle.com/podcast, neuralle.com/podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you leave us a review. It's really important for us to grow our community, and those reviews are crucial to that. In return, you can win a few prizes that we've had for our launch competition, including an Apple Watch 2, my favorite, the Kindle Paperwhite, and an Amazon gift card. For further steps, again, head to neuralle.com/podcast, where you can also get the show notes for this episode and sign up to have priority access as a cognitive insider, as we call it. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. That's just at Neuralle, Neuralle, and the same for Twitter as well. So in this episode, we interviewed Charlie Carrington. Charlie's skills as a chef are quite distinct, not just because of his age, but because of his breadth of knowledge accumulated in such a small period of time. Committing to what his competency and passion are at a very young age has, I think, led Charlie to a position that most promising chefs would only dream of at the age of 30, let alone 22. And I knew that Charlie went to school with my brother, and I knew when I first heard that he'd left school at an early age to specifically go do chefing that we would see good things from young Charlie in future years. In this episode, we got into covering a vast array of topics. Some of those included coming to stage, as they call it, at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. So his first experience one of the first experiences in a commercial restaurant. The influences of chefs such as Claire Smythe, his formative experiences at Vue de Monde, Mark, traveling around the world, then learning to cook with woodfire, which has been a recent change, the benefits of that fire-based cooking, and therefore sort of the unique experience that you could expect at his restaurant of Atlas Dining. Covered things like learning from different cultures and styles of foods, advice on opening a new restaurant, and his influences in Australia. I think this is a really enjoyable episode. It's, like I said, it's quite unique to have a chef this young do so well. So without any further ceremony or ado, please enjoy this conversation with Charlie Carrington. Thanks for joining, Charlie Carrington. We'll obviously include a lot about who you are, what you do, a little bit about Atlas.
Yeah.
I was wanting to start off at the very start, probably when you were around 14.
Yeah.
And this is when probably, I guess, your family first started noticing you might have the skills to be a chef. So obviously speaking to your brother, the thing that he noted, or the first time he sort of noticed that this may be your thing, was I think you were in the kitchen and you were sort of like multitasking. You were on the phone, you're making a milkshake, and you're making nachos at the same time, and your dad was like, you should be a chef.
Yeah.
Do you remember that at all?
It's funny you say that. I actually don't, but I do remember cooking after school and making like ridiculously funny things that weren't necessarily the sort of thing a normal person would make after school. I think we even made like Peking duck once.
Really?
Yeah.
Straight after school?
Straight after school, yeah.
Wow.
Like for me and my brother. Yeah, I definitely don't remember the multitasking though.
Now, it was around that time that MasterChef came out, right?
I think they may have done 1 or 2 seasons.
Okay.
Prior to then, I think they're in their 9th or 10th now, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone knows the mystery box, right?
Yeah.
So I heard that you used to do a little mystery box every night.
Yeah,
not every night.
Yeah,
but
I've done a few of them. Yeah, like it just used to be like something just for fun to make dinner, but like it was a great learning thing. It's harder than you think, even now.
Yeah.
Like after, years of experience, you still can get blindsided.
So what's probably can you remember the best dish and the worst dish that you made from the old mystery box?
Oh, that's stretching the memory. That's a good question actually. Nothing really springs to mind, so I think they were all pretty mediocre. But yeah.
So it was around that time, and I think based on what your brother had mentioned, that was when you sort of said to your parents, "Look, I want to be a chef."
Yeah.
And you're about 15, right?
No, so I was about 14, and I actually went and did I remember it really vividly. I went and did a trial at this restaurant in Bay Street, Brighton, and
what was it?
What was it called?
Vivace? Or
no, it's called Rock Salt now.
Oh yeah.
But it used to be something else, I think.
Okay.
And I did a trial there, and I was actually like just really young, and like they just got me helping doing the most simple tasks. And I remember how blown away I was by and like looking back, they're like all a bunch of donkeys. Like how they worked, like it's disgusting. Like I wouldn't put up with that, not even in a million years. But
yeah,
when you got no idea, you think, wow, like look at them work, and they had like everything was like prepared, and it was very organized in that sense. Like that's what blew my mind about the commercial kitchen,
the systematic approach. Yeah,
like everything was done, and they were able to like produce something in a short amount of time, which sounds obvious, but this is years ago. And they were able to produce something in a short amount of time everything was done beforehand. So I was really impressed.
Yeah.
And I got the job there, but due to my age, I was actually too young. So I couldn't start for like another 3 months or something. So I put that on the back burner and they didn't want to get in trouble for having someone younger than the legal working age there.
Okay.
And then we had a family friend who was working at the Stokehouse, and that's through that connection I got an interview, and then Simon Sullivan was the head chef there, and at the time downstairs, and he gave me the job at the Stokehouse when I was 14 and 9 months. I started.
Yeah,
and, that was just like working in a restaurant of that caliber. I'm just so glad I did.
Yeah,
like it wasn't easy, but it wasn't like. I don't know, they really taught me well.
Yeah, I can remember that. I remember, obviously, I started in hospitality young, and just that, when you go into that environment, it's just that sort of, you really feel something, don't you? Like sort of this euphoric feeling like, wow, I'm really in this.
Yeah, and you want to work at somewhere surrounded by, that's busy and has a good name, and, the people, like it attracts people to work there, because I think that you're going to be surrounded by, better people pretty much, and you'll learn a lot more.
Yeah. So when did the idea to reach out to, I guess, Gordon Ramsay's restaurant come to mind?
So my mum and I were going on a holiday. I was still at school at this stage. And we're going on a holiday to Europe. So we're spending like a month, say, like a bit of Greece, a little bit of Italy, that sort of thing. It was unbelievable, as you can imagine. And then I was either going to go home or I'd had a month left, and I wanted to do a month stage at Royal Hospital Road.
Yep.
And it was just like I emailed them, and I got an email back, and they're like, "Sure, come in." And I was obviously just like, and mind you, this is after working at Stokehouse for about a year and a half or so.
Okay.
So like I'd been had some experience, but I was still cheap herb picker. And then so I went there, and I remember when, so vividly, I was in the at Gardenord train station, and I was going to the UK for a month.
Yeah.
And I got pulled up, and they took all my knives, chef's gear, called the restaurant and said I wasn't allowed to do it because it's technically working.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
yeah, your brother had mentioned that and asked him what happened in Paris.
Yeah. So then, but luckily we found a way around it, and I was able to do a shorter version. I was there for about 2.5 weeks, as opposed to a month. But that experience was just crazy. Like Gordon Ramsay had a show in like 1999 and 2000 called Boiling Point and Beyond Boiling Point.
How good was it?
Unbelievable. Yeah. Seriously, like, and
that if you go back on YouTube, just to FYI to everyone else listening, you can still find those episodes. I love it. I always still go back to it.
I reckon I've seen both seasons, like seriously 20 times.
Yeah.
I just love it.
And just like seeing little things like, young Jamie Oliver just like doing probably a stage as well.
And like, it's an awesome show, but like I was always mesmerized by that. And I'm not saying like I condone that sort of environment or whatever. I'm not saying that's the best way to operate, nor am I saying it's not. But I'm just, I think that like when you're young, that was like a massive influence because you saw like what it's like for someone to be at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Obviously, he pretty much that was like his springboard into fame because he was obviously took a different approach to a lot of other people, but you can't. Still to this day, I think Gordon Ramsay is probably my idol in the cooking world. But so I went there, and it was exactly what was shown on the TV. Like it was like that.
It was mental,
It was mental, but what they had, they just had ridiculous standards. That's it, and it's amazing because I still to this day think that's probably the place out of anywhere I've ever been has the highest standards. Like. If it's not perfect, it's not acceptable. And that's why they've had, I think, for maybe over 15 years now, I could be wrong, might be 14, had 3 Michelin stars.
Yeah.
So,
I actually looked back at it yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was about that time frame. It's a long time, man.
It's a long time.
Like even if you look back to most of his restaurants were open 99, 2000, 2001, and they're still open today.
Yeah.
It's quite exceptional.
He's an unbelievable person. I remember like the first time I went to a book signing and met him and I couldn't even talk. Oh, really? I just think he's just one of those people who's just like, I don't know, he's just very inspirational, I think, and he's inspired me a lot.
I think what he did, like for me, when I was watching those original documentaries, it was that he sort of showed that, my perception of chefing or being in hospitality was you had to be this real fluid, artistic individual all the time. But he sort of showed that you could do that to create the menu, but then everything else in terms of process, because I'm a very process-driven person, was like sort of like it was like running an army in a way. Yeah. And it's quite impressive just watching it.
Yeah.
The showpiece of
and the staff that have like come from there.
Oh,
like,
man.
The people. Like I even watched a tiny little interview the other day. It's like he must have done it this year or last year or whatever. But he's just said like the key to his success for that restaurant is that he's been able to train people to have his palate even when he's not there.
Yeah.
And he trusts them, and that's why he's been able to maintain that level of his standards at the restaurant. Because obviously he's a busy guy, wouldn't be able to be there. Maybe might not be there for 3 weeks. I'm sure he always pops in when possible.
Yeah.
But he's able to keep that level, and that's unbelievable. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you read his biography at all?
Yeah, I've read both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got the original one. I don't know what it's called, but it's like
one like Playing with Fire.
Playing with Fire. Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you're at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. Yeah. You met a lady named Claire Smith. I believe she
Smythe,
had
yeah.
Smythe, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And I heard
she is the most, definitely the most amazing chef I've ever worked with in the kitchen. She's just an absolute machine. Simply, she would like never give up. She's just one of those people that her standards are so unbelievably high that some people may not get it.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, she's nasty, but she's not a nasty person. She's a lovely person.
Yeah.
She's just she knows what she wants, and it's quite an unbelievable thing to say. I reckon there's 1 in a billion like her.
So what do you think what was the influence she had on you? Because you've mentioned that in a few different interviews that she had a big influence, but no one really dug into it. So
the influence she had is when I left after my time there, I was very lucky to get given Gordon Ramsay's 3-star chef cookbook.
Okay.
Amazing book. Definitely, I'm sure that was one of the highlights of his career, writing that book. And, calling a book 3-star chef would be a pretty amazing, amazing thing to do. But especially, when you are one.
Yeah.
But she gave me the book, and everyone in the kitchen had signed it and written something nice. And she wrote the quote, though. I think it said, "Dear Charlie, there's no easy route to anywhere worth going. Keep that in mind and you will go far."
Wow.
And I think that quote alone has really inspired me to get up, keep working, try new things and not take the easy, the easy path.
Yeah.
And for sure, I would for me, if I had her in at the restaurant, that would be possibly the biggest of big.
Yeah.
Out of anyone on earth, more so probably than Gordon himself, having her would just be insane.
It's interesting because I sort of feel that when people have those sort of lines delivered to you at that age, it adds a significant weight.
Yeah. And by someone who you look up to with so much respect, it's almost like she's given like a positive reinforcement saying if you work hard, you will go far. She said that she sees the potential, and that and someone like that seeing potential in someone who's literally cutting up chervil or something far out.
I think they would have just realized that as what a lot of people said is just you were very targeted to what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I think that when people recognize that, it's rare to have that.
Yeah.
And they want to sort of grow it.
Yeah.
So you went there.
Yeah.
You came back.
Yeah.
I've got here that you then apprenticed at Vue de Monde, or you wouldn't do anything but Vue de Monde.
No. So what happened is when I was working, I'd obviously knew all about Vue de Monde prior to going, but I hadn't hadn't even considered the option of sort of going there to work, and also as a very young apprentice to be able to go and eat there would be a little bit out of the budget. Not that it's certainly not worth it, and I suppose we'll get to that later. But the sous chef at the time, who's now the head chef, I believe he's like is he executive chef or the chef de patron? It's one or the other. His name's Matt Abe. He's an Australian.
Okay.
Unbelievable chef as well. Probably the fastest chef I've ever seen.
How do you mean?
Like watching him prepare food before service is like watching Usain Bolt in the kitchen. He's just so quick and meticulous, and that's the one thing I remember. I remember one time I watched him fillet a fish, and he literally put it on the chopping board, and I swear to God, it was packed away in 35 seconds. It would have made it like a sushi chef would have been still confused. It was unbelievable to watch. He's just quick and such high standards as well. Yeah. But he had been a chef de partie, so that means a chef of the section at Vue de Monde prior to going over to the UK, which he's been there for 10 or plus years now.
Yeah.
And so he said to me, "Oh well, you should go work at Vue de Monde because and said what a great restaurant it was, and obviously I really wanted to. So I came back, and I think the next day or something I had I'd already sent the email off and whatever, and they said, "Okay, cool." What did I think they may have even said no, or they're like, "Okay, cool, maybe come meet with us." It was a bit weird that at first. Okay. And then I went in, and I remember saying, "Okay, cool, well, can I do a trial? I just want to, I want to come in, whatever." So they're fine. It was a bit sort of, they were maybe thinking, "Oh, well, maybe you might want to go to one of the other venues." It was uncommon for a young person to be going to Vue de Monde and starting there, because it's just, that at that time that was, and I still believe is one of the most premier restaurants to work at in Melbourne, especially for what you learn. But anyway, so I did the first day of the trial, and I remember I was first there, last to leave, the standard sort of when you really want something. And then the next day I did the same thing. And maybe it was 5 o'clock just before service. The head chef at the time, Corey Campbell, who now lives in New South Wales and is doing something interesting up there. He said to me, he goes, "Look, I'm not going to hire you because you've got any skill or anything like that. I'm going to hire you just based on the fact that you really want to be here."
Yeah.
And so then, I started, and I ended up staying at Vue de Monde, including my time at the next location, which is where it currently is, at the top of the Rialto, for just over a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I think I was by that time, I was maybe the third or fourth longest serving staff member.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's quite a high turnover there.
Of course, yeah. I remember just going back to like the press club. I mean, the turnover probably wasn't as high there because it's not three. It wasn't three. It was Vidamon was 3 hats.
Yeah.
Press club too.
And still is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did lose 1 hat for a year, but they've
Yeah.
been lucky enough to gain it back.
You definitely notice it though when you're in that environment. It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's just
and it's a certain sort of person wants
Yeah.
to work there, and like, I'm not commenting on what it's like now. I'm sure it's still equally as amazing, but back then, especially when we worked at Little Collins Street, the team was quite amazing. Like the common drive between everyone to do like something incredible, and like the chefs that I used to work with from Vitamont have gone on and like all of them are doing something good.
yeah,
Yeah, like that was pretty cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know you're in a good place when you see what I guess the alumni are doing afterwards.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
always interesting to see that.
Yeah.
So by then, you what year were you into your apprenticeship? By then,
That would have been my second, yeah, because I did the 3rd year at Mark in Sydney. So
okay. So what made you move up to Sydney?
so after I worked at Vitamont, I actually did a trial at Attica for a week,
okay.
and I
Right.
didn't get the job.
Really?
Yeah, didn't get the job. So that was a that was a massive kick in the teeth. And to be
Wow.
honest, that was possibly the best thing that ever happened. Like Attica is an amazing restaurant, but I definitely can say that the things that happened after that shaped me way further than what I would have learnt there.
Wow.
I do believe that.
Yeah.
And
You need those moments though.
yeah, because it pushed me, because then I was like, okay, cool. So I moved to Sydney. I went up with my girlfriend at the time, my mum, and we had dinner at Mark. And I, said I really want to work here, whatever. And they're like, okay, cool. And I believe I actually got the job on the spot. Or it was something like come and do a trial, but it was like pretty secured that I'd had the job, because they were looking for an apprentice at the time and whatever. And when I was working at Mark, like I remember it was like working there at the time, it wasn't the easiest place to work, because like certain staff members and whatever, like I won't be name dropping, but were difficult people. But I learnt a lot there, and I think living like outside of home, like, and I was like 18 or something, like living in Sydney, renting a place, you know what I mean? Like it was quite a big change, so it was a really good stepping stone, because you sort of grow a lot in that time. And I wouldn't say I always loved working at Mark, but I definitely gained a lot from it.
Yeah.
And
were there any distinct experiences to you?
I just think it was just I think it was a place, because it was such a small kitchen with so many great staff. There was a lot of like ego clashing.
Oh, okay.
And I think that was like really apparent. And
what did you learn from that? Like, is there something that you've learnt from that you think that
I learned,
you try and make sure it's not instilled in your kitchen?
Yeah, I definitely learned how I want to. I think like after that experience, I probably continued with like some of the behaviours that other people there were doing.
Okay.
And more recently, especially since having Atlas and prior, we like those. I would say I work the opposite to how I would there.
Yeah.
Like it's just not necessary.
So less pressure, more
Still same standards.
Yeah.
But just approaching it differently. Like you don't need to
operational standards, but just being a different type of leader.
Yeah, and you don't need to be nasty to people.
Yeah.
That's probably what I learned most. Like you don't need to like personally be nasty to people. You know what I mean? You can actually achieve something amazing and be a nice person.
Yeah. So from there, it was off to Fire Door?
No. So from there, I went some holidays. I actually lived in London for 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I lived in London and I worked at Jamie Oliver's 15. I loved living in London, but I think it wasn't, it was an amazing, actually at the time, the chef John Rothram, who now has a place, I believe it's called The Marksman. I haven't been there, but I've been seeing what they do like on Instagram and social media and stuff, and that looks amazing. He was head chef at St. John by Fergus Henderson for quite a number of years.
Okay.
And, he did that food, I wouldn't say, he had his own style, but he did just beautiful, tasty British food. And I think I learnt a lot there. And also, what was great about 15 when I worked there is, there actually was 15 apprentices, and a lot of them like did have some issues or whatever, and you really got to learn how to deal with people, because these people are like the people who would snap.
Yeah.
So like you know what I mean? You've got to you've got to learn how to talk to people, and every single one of them you talk to differently.
Yeah.
Which like just a average kitchen, you can just talk to everyone the same. But there I felt like you had to not watch what you say, like, because you're not like being nasty to them, but you had to, each one that had an issue, you'd approach it differently. And that was really good for learning, because you got to sort of, get an understanding of what is the right way to approach different people.
What buttons to push and when not to.
Yeah, but like there, it was never like a nasty environment. Like no matter what they did, none of them ever got like bullied, belittled, yelled at. Like it wasn't like that at all. You know what I mean? Like we had high standards. They were serving great food, but they weren't like, everyone understood that they're young, they're learning, they've been like probably working in the kitchen for, between 6 months to a year. So like, and you got 15 of them. So, of course mistakes will be made. So it wasn't, but that was a great learning curve. But then when I got back, I started working with my old boss who now runs Amaru, which is Clinton.
Yes.
And we, so he took over a bowls club in Clayton.
Yeah, I remember I came in once for dinner.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Exactly. And like, that's what was, that was a really interesting place to work, because I got to see then like by doing something that's like good value and tasty food, like the people will come. Like people were going to Clayton, like of all places.
I know, yeah. And it was like mental.
Yeah, because it's never that, that's not a place that's known for, Clayton Road is some of the best like Indian and Chinese food in Australia, I reckon.
Yeah, but it's not a place you'd expect a fine dining restaurant.
No. And it was a bowls club setting. So I worked there with him, and we were meant to shut like after like, I think it was like a year, and it ended up going on for about like a year and 4 months, maybe something like that. Like it was a long time for a pop-up. It was a pop-up restaurant.
Yeah.
And then, but like what was also good about that is I saw what like you could do with a small team. Okay. Like we, had a really little team, but we were able to work efficiently and, I think because it was such a small team, we all really grew a lot and got a lot faster, a lot sort of sharper.
Yeah.
Because you had to. Like it wasn't like we didn't have 10 people to rely on.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that aspect of that. Like I thought that was the most amazing thing about that place, because it just, a lot of places I've worked have had multiple chefs, front of house staff, and it doesn't actually add to the experience.
Yeah. It's hard to scale very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. And then after that, then I went away on this massive trip. So I remember it was like November 30th or something like that. We closed the bowls club, did the final, I think it was a Sunday lunch, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then we all went away. So actually it was funny. We both ended up going to South America, because Clinton's partner is from Brazil.
That's right. Yeah.
And, so they're having a baby actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In like maybe, I don't know, maybe about 2 months or something like that. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I know it's a little boy, so that's really good for them. And, but yeah, so they went to Brazil, and Clinton was working at a restaurant called Lasai, which I ended up going to eat at as well, which was amazing. He did like a stage, and then as well traveled around a bit of South America and, had a holiday like everyone. Like we worked pretty hard. Like it was holiday time for sure. And then I remember I got there and I had no plans to actually work, but I had all my gear sort of thing with me.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, like I was going to work maybe after like 6 months of like traveling. I wanted to just like travel, but I got to Brazil, and after like 1 week I was like, oh, actually, look, I want to work. So I stayed in Brazil for 6 weeks and worked for 2 weeks at 3 different places.
Okay.
And one was like a cake shop. One was a like a sort of it ended up getting a Michelin star, this restaurant.
Really?
Yeah. But it was a pretty like chilled out sort of restaurant that did amazing food, tasting menu, but like really, really good. Yeah. And then where was the other place? Oh yeah. And Macchiato, which is like a Brazilian, how would I explain it? It's like they just do like the most tasty food, and it's in the worst neighborhood, and it just absolutely pumps. Like it's crazy, but it's been there for years and years and years.
What city is this, by the way?
That was in Sao Paulo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, then I went to, I traveled around a little bit of South America, and then I went to Bolivia and worked for a month at Gustu, which is owned by Klaus Meyer, who was one of the sort of founders, or I don't know if you'd call him a founder of Noma, but he was maybe the key investor or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what the technicalities are. And then after that, I went to San Francisco, which I hated.
Really?
Yeah, it was not for me. Like that, that's the sort of that's the environment that I found. Like I've seen only a few times, and I feel like that environment, like it's not like, for me, I didn't feel like it was like passionate about working.
It's just too intense or
unnecessarily intense.
Right.
And like for me, I just think like you can't fault, like I had dinner there and it was just amazing. But for my personal taste, like when I'm working, I want to be excited about what I'm doing and, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like it's, you're cooking.
I think one of the things that's often missed is that, this is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you want to have fun while you're doing it, but also be good.
Yeah. But you can uphold your standards and have fun. Like I felt like, a lot of people would dislike their lives even. Like it was, like, and you're like, well, far out.
I've been in kitchens like that. It's just, I've been around kitchens like that. You can tell from front of house, just people are deeply unhappy. Yeah.
And it's, it just takes like you can't fault that their standards are probably some of the highest in the US. It's an insane restaurant. Like, and I think, there was definitely people who loved working there, and the food, you couldn't fault the actual restaurant, but the environment for me wasn't what I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And then, after that, I went to Mexico and I worked at Quintanil, which got like, I think number 9 or number 12 in the world this year. Amazing restaurant, unbelievable experience. I loved Mexico. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And, then after that, I had probably my favorite place. So I went to, it's called the Jane in Belgium, 2 Michelin star restaurant.
Okay.
And these guys were the definition of having fun while working hard. Like I've never seen people work harder in my entire life. The hours were ridiculous, but exciting at the same time. And what I loved is like when I started, I was there for 1 month, and on my first week, 2 of the guys were leaving just, they'd been there X amount of time, whatever, they're moving on to do other things, which always happens. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, while we're looking for someone else, we're going to get you to manage this section. And I was like, like an unpaid staff, but it was so good. Like, you know what I mean? Like you properly were running around, like pushing yourself for it, but it was just great. So I loved working there. That was to date probably my favorite kitchen experience ever. The food's exceptional. They listen to loud music. They just have a lot of fun while there. Like it's just it's maybe that's not for everyone either, because it is quite challenging, but also exciting.
Yeah.
Like although you're exhausted, you'd had a smile on your face. Like that's what I liked about there. And then after that, I did a little bit of traveling in Europe, which was great, and ate at some amazing restaurants and whatever. And then I came back, and that's when I came back and I said, all right, well, I'm going to move back to Sydney.
Okay.
I wanted to, I don't know, I felt like I have no idea what it was about Sydney, but I felt like at the time, I really wanted to go. So I went, and then that's when I started working at Fire Door. And when I started working at Fire Door, I remember at first it just wasn't for me. I just didn't get it. Like it was very, like when you've come from a background of all these restaurants, you've worked with a lot, like the techniques you've worked with are like sous vide or, pan roasting and stuff. And this place, Fire Door, they were doing like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And at first, I think you couldn't fault what they were doing, but it was actually, I just didn't understand it.
Your brain's like, well, this is weird.
Yeah. Like you almost can't comprehend. You're like, why are they doing it like this? Yeah. And then, after a little bit of time there, I realized they're doing it like that for the flavor of what they're cooking.
Yeah.
And, I worked there for maybe after about 2 months, and then I started to do the grills with Lennox. And at first it was so challenging because just it just wasn't easy because it was just something that was so different.
Yeah.
And then after, say, 4 weeks of just running around like crazy, like it finally clicked, and I was like, oh, all right, hold on, I can do this. And then from that point onwards, I just absolutely loved it because it was simply just so different and challenging to what I'd ever done before.
Yeah.
Not necessarily easier or harder or anything like that. It was just a new experience.
Yeah.
And that has been out of anywhere I've ever worked, the most sort of, I don't know, it's given me the sort of, what do I even want to say? Like,
do you think it had? Do you think that it was, Lennox had changed your perception on what you could do with food?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, like working there, like, and I think a lot of people who work there don't really understand, like, the simple things that they do there are actually unbelievable. Like, and a lot of people, I don't think can.
Well, Bourdain speaks about this heaps.
Yeah.
Right? Like, a lot of people sometimes just overwork food.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, like, we went to Embla for dinner last night. I go all the time.
Yeah.
And, there's just something about just using simplistic methods to create amazing flavors.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it is quite unique.
Yeah. And, like, it's very, I think, easy once you've got a certain level of training to be, pulling out all your tricks and all your techniques. But I think it's sometimes harder to, like, really hold yourself back and, go, like, we've even got dishes on at the moment. You want to add something just for the hell of it. But, like,
but you have to stop yourself, yeah.
And when you don't, like, the dishes that we don't add anything to are, like, easily the most successful. And for sure, we might cut things in our own way, season them in our own way, serve them in and present them in our own way. But we don't, what am I trying to say? Like, we make them our own, but we keep them simple. Yeah. So, like, the essence of what it should be is still there, but the presentation and the actual execution makes it somewhat wow. Yeah. Like, it's still got a wow factor, although it's simple. Yeah,
the analogy I've had with friends is that the modern style of cooking is sort of like, in investing, is like your hyper maths-based, investment houses where they've got PhDs doing all these calculations, working insane hours to get the most out of their money. And then fire, or using wood and fire, is sort of more your value investing model, like your Warren Buffetts of the world, that just look at things as they are and try and pare it back for the value that you can get in food.
Yeah.
After Firedoor, is this when Atlas came about?
So while I was working at Firedoor, and I was openly honest with them at the time about this, that I was wanting to start this, the concept probably while I was there wasn't as strong as it is now.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do something where the menu changed. I knew I wanted it to be small, actually, and then I wanted this, wanted that, and as like any good concept, it just keeps evolving, like, over a period of months. But I used to, like, after work at Firedoor in the night, I used to get on my bike and ride around Sydney looking for police signs, and it was so depressing because it's like I couldn't find anything, and, like, no matter how much I forced it, it actually did the opposite. Like,
really?
Yeah, I found that, like, the sites. So I found one site, and I remember we really went through. Like, we even had like an architect, the architect who actually ended up doing Atlas in Melbourne, did like a floor plan, and you know what I mean. Like, we were really wanting it, and then just due to like the sort of rents up there and whatever. I'm sure it's not everywhere, but like in the areas we were looking, they were too excessive.
It's expensive.
Yeah. And I don't think that, like, we didn't want to charge massive prices. So it, the rent would, if it was that high, would mean that we'd need to. And
in the food, yeah, of course.
That would take away, I think, from what we actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it ended up not working. And I remember I thought, well, okay, I'm going to move back to Melbourne. Like, I think maybe, like I had an apartment and stuff here, and I thought, well, why not? Let's just, I've had enough. And then 4 days later, I found Atlas, where we're currently sitting right now.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the cooking style and using firewood again. Obviously, Lennox had a big influence on you. Do you think you'd ever go back to using gas induction or sous vide styles, or were you?
No, at this restaurant.
Not specifically at this restaurant, but would you consider it again in the future?
In the future, yes, because for certain restaurants or certain concepts, it actually makes sense. But for Atlas and what we do now, and with our brand, like, this is what we do. Like, it is fire based. But like, for example, let's say a more casual restaurant, it might be that we do things in the wood fire oven, and then they were sent to another venue, where they've just, they might be warmed in a normal oven, but they still have that flavor. Like, it's not always possible, I don't think, to have, this sort of setup, and I'm not saying that people couldn't learn it like quite easily. Like you've got it, it involves a lot of, you get better with it every day. Like you'll never master cooking with fire, but I think it involves like a certain skill set that, maybe it's not the most efficient thing to, like you really, I notice that like with the fire, you really have to be
on it all the time.
All over it, yeah.
The thing though that stood out to me was that, I was just looking at the intro video that you've got on the Atlas website, and we'll reference this for everyone. But the biggest thing was if you look at the kitchen, you've got, in comparison to what another kitchen would be, you're not spending all this money on the gas stoves.
No, like
the sous vide stuff.
This stuff is still expensive. Like I'd say it's sort of in the same price.
Really?
Area. Yeah, like even those like brick walls and stuff, you know what I mean? They're all like insulated with like all calcium silicate behind it. Like it's very, everything there is built to withstand like real fires and stuff. I think it would be expensive if we mixed mediums, because that means you need like 2 exhausts, 2 of everything. Like you can't, but because we're like 100% fire, like we do have 2 inductions to just dropping in the bench for boiling stocks and stuff, which, it's just way smarter. And we have 1 combi oven, which we use as a plate warmer. But yeah, like with the fire stuff, like it's not, I wouldn't say that like the gas stoves and stuff are less expensive, but I'd say that what we have here is probably more diverse, and we've got more options.
Yeah. The other thing that stood out to me is through a lot of these interviews is, you emphasize a lot on the uniqueness of your style. And one thing I was talking to my partner about the other night was that a lot of people, they open a restaurant, they think they're, let's say they're Italian and they're competing with the Italian restaurant down the road. Yeah. But often what's the case is they're competing against other dining styles or other mediums for getting someone to come in and eat, right? Yeah. And I don't know, I just felt like from a marketability perspective, it's very unique and offers something that a lot of people don't realize or don't have.
I think what the thing that we've done here is because with so many restaurants opening all the time, and there's always something new in Melbourne. I think that, and because we only really offer 1 menu, we need to have people, like no matter how much they love it, we don't want them to just come once. You know what I mean? We'd love to serve the same people 3 times a year and be full every night. That would be the ideal thing. Yeah, everyone's regular then, because that's what we'd like. Like, we don't want to have, we're not like a sort of restaurant that just, I don't know, offers something and people just come in just to have dinner. Like, it's an experience. So, because we change our experience and keep it fresh, people are drawn to coming back. Like, when we opened with our new menu, our first week, like, I'd say maybe 60% of the diners were all regulars.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And they've all been before, and they're like, oh, wow, we want to try what's new.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's,
I'm really looking forward to coming back to try the Israeli menu. So, yeah.
And I think but that's what I mean. Like, we've got something that makes you want to come back.
Exactly.
And that, I think that this day and age, you need in a restaurant, because a lot of diners for sure, and I'm guilty of this myself, love going and trying everywhere once.
And then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you might not have the time to go back to another place because, but what about this place they've opened? Yeah. Yeah. And regardless of how much you love your experience, it's hard to be a repeat guest, especially for me. Like, we only have like 2 nights, Sunday and Monday, where we have the opportunity to go out. Yeah. But that's how I feel. I think that we really, keep it fresh, but we learn from doing it as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of learning, is there anything that you notice from doing, like, cross-culturally? Yeah. Is there anything you've noticed that's common across each style of food?
Well, we've only really explored like Vietnamese and Israeli at the moment, and I would say that like that question, I think after maybe we've done a few more changes, I could give you a better insight. But I can say that
well, based on your experiences of different cultures as you've travelled,
like there is a lot of similarities, but then there's also the thing that amazes me sometimes is like the simple things that, like, it could be something like far out. Like, what's like a good example? Like in Mexico, I remember they would like they'd like soak these dried chilies, and then they'd then they'd re-dry them, and then they'd cook them in a stock. So, like, you'd never do that anywhere else. But, like, something as simple as that, it gave, like, a really unique flavour to the dish. Or, like, everywhere's got, like, I think the simple things that are the better ones. Yeah,
I've noticed that in both your menus now, you've done a bread. Is that something that you always do?
We do a bread because I think people have an expectation that they want something like a bread at the start. I love making bread as well. And it's really good for us because we've done baguettes, which were sourdough baguettes, which I think were a pretty good baguette.
They were very good, yeah.
And then, we're doing pita breads at the moment, which we puff in the wood fire oven every day. And then we do halal, which is like a traditional Jewish bread.
Yeah.
Similar to like a brioche, but made with olive oil instead.
Okay. What have you learned first time opening a restaurant? What are the things that people don't tell you? That if a friend came to you and they're saying, hey, I want to open a restaurant, what would you say to them? You must know about this.
I think you need to attract great people. Like, I think that's the most important thing. Like, if you, it's really, like, it's not easy to get people to believe in what you're doing and, excite them and stuff. But if you attract great people, and they support you, you'll find it a lot easier. And, like, you work as a team.
Okay.
And I think that as well, when you open like this, I don't think this applies for any restaurant, but like if you open a restaurant and that, that's doing something that's a bit unique or wanting to be hatted or, along those lines, I think you've got to, share the, I don't want to use the word like glory, but you've got to, make sure
the results you share
because
across.
It is actually a lot of teamwork involved in those results. Like there's countless things that like ideas that people have brought that have become like staples almost.
Yeah.
And, you go, oh wow, like, but you can't be like, it's all you, like it's not. And I think people, they have a bit of ownership then and they really love that, which is great because they've created something and they can stand, they're excited by it.
So speaking of people, how do you maintain standards then without driving them nuts?
Maintaining standards,
do you guys have certain processes that you just will not ever let anyone go past? Is there certain things that you put in place?
Well, like we have these like cutlery rolls, but like the reason we did that is because it makes sense. Like we don't need to be interrupting guests 6 times a night to put cutlery down. Like nor do we need to have someone that's like running around just doing that. Like, I don't know. Like there's like that sort of process like we'd keep, but like besides that, we change, like, and with each cuisine we can change drastically. Like whatever we want to do, we can actually do here. That's with the concept, which is cool because I think a lot of restaurants like might have, people have a set idea of what to expect, and then they're like, that's it. Like, yeah.
So when it comes to, I mean, it's obvious to me over your time how rapid your learning has been. Yeah. It's funny. A lot of people say, oh, the chef, he's so young. But, I mean, you've been in the industry for 7.5 years now, right?
Yeah.
7.5?
Might even be like a little bit longer than that, really.
8.
Yeah, about 8, yeah.
So it's sort of like the same time that most people would look at opening their restaurant.
Yeah.
What would you say to people? Because I find even like most industries, some chefs can just stay in the one restaurant for, say, 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
What would you say to them about changing their mindset and jumping ship every...
I don't think it's not necessarily about jumping ship. Like I certainly did.
Well, not jumping ship, but knowing when to leave, I guess.
Yeah. I think getting multiple experiences is necessary. Like every place I worked opened my eyes, and like you just learn what you do and don't like. And I think when you've seen a lot of amazing places, then you go, okay, cool. You just pick what you like about all of them and you can apply those systems. But like, I think it's good also that people do stay at places for a long time. But as long as those places are good, you're fine. Like if you're working somewhere that's doing great things, then...
So long as you're learning, right?
Yeah, but as long as a restaurant does great things. Like if you've worked somewhere really average for 3 years or something, I don't think that's a good way to spend your time.
No. So when we talk of admiration or like culinary geniuses, you spoke about Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else in particular that you just love staying on top of and seeing what they're doing? It could be even locally. Like who actually, let me rephrase that. who consistently punches above their weight in Australia when it comes to cooking?
Obvious one that just springs to mind is like Peter Gilmore.
Okay.
From Key and Benelong. He's just a ridiculously amazing chef. When I did this dinner at Fired or with them, I just went up for the day and just worked they did it for 2 nights, but I only got to work one night. It was like a week before we opened. Pretty ridiculous thing to go and do for an opening restaurant, but I went and did the night there and like working. That was the first time I've ever been in the kitchen when Peter Gilmore was working, and it's just like watching him work was not normal. Like he was so organised and like he just knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I haven't really seen like someone like that before who just was that set up, ready for action, and just organised. Like it was nothing was really a problem because he was just
fluid.
He just knew.
He was just in that sort of flow. It was just,
but he just knew like what was going to happen. Like nothing. It wasn't going to be a curveball.
Yeah.
And that dinner was such a success. Like it was an amazing night, and so him. That's an obvious one though, for sure, because he's been on top of his game for probably 15 years, so which is an amazing achievement in itself. But who else do I really like in the industry? It's a really, really, really good question. I have a lot of respect for like even like Sean Quaid from Lume in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I haven't been there, I haven't eaten there, but I think that that's someone who has really like stuck with what they want to do.
Yeah.
Which I think it's very easy. Like say if you weren't like I know like at first they maybe weren't as that busy, or you know people were negative about it because it was amazing what they were doing, but it might have been too far ahead for some people. But he's stuck with what he's doing and had massive success now. Yeah. And he's like really, I don't know, he simply does his food.
Yeah.
Regardless of what people say about it. And I just think that's amazing. Like you can get sidetracked.
Yeah.
And he hasn't gotten sidetracked.
I'm starting to get wary of time now. We've hit about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know that you guys will probably want to start prepping for dinner soon, but I might switch to some more fast-paced questions to finish things off.
Yeah.
When you're stressed or you're getting into any sort of areas of negativity, what do you turn to sort of get you out of that?
I do a run around the town.
Do a run?
Yeah, I go for a run. I try and do a run 3 times a week.
Okay.
And I notice that like those days, and even the day after, I just feel amazing. Like you can't, I don't know, like you feel clear-headed. Like you don't want to, no matter how challenged you are, I feel that if I go for a run, I always can find a solution.
Yeah. Dolphins will do that.
Yeah.
Is through the years and whether you've seen it directly or indirectly, is there any sort of lesson that you've taken from your parents over the years? You know, maybe they've said it to you, or maybe you've just seen it through them practicing it.
I think them just like being extremely supportive, like even at times when they're probably thinking like, oh my God. Like I remember my dad said to me recently, he goes, oh, you know, I used to have nightmares that when you opened Atlas, that like I'd drive past on a Thursday night and there'd be like 2 people in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, you know, obviously that's a nice, caring thing to say, but, and that, you know, that hasn't happened, you know, thank God. But like, you know what I mean? I think that sort of like, but they'd still believed in me.
Yeah. They're rooting for you.
Yeah. So that's fine. Like then when you've got that sort of support, it's very, you know what I mean? Like there's, like we there wouldn't be like I simply would not let this place fail. Like I love like no, and back then when I started, I just knew that was going to be the case, and by believing in what I wanted to do and following through with that, we've had so much interest and whatever, and I think that will keep going because each week we like aim to get better. We just make the experience better all the time.
Yeah. Do you have any morning ritual? Like get up, read the paper?
I would say, to be honest, I would love to get up and go for a run, but I generally find myself doing that in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I find that if I just I come straight to work, I always just I'm the most switched on. I love like the obvious, like having a coffee or something. But yeah, like I'd say it's more my afternoons, like my afternoon run that's the one that really.
Does that you just jump out for an afternoon run just down the road?
So I'll usually like come in quite a bit earlier, get all the sort of admin side of it done, get set up in the kitchen with the guys, and then I'll disappear for like an hour.
Okay.
And I find that is just the game changer.
Yeah. What do you have on your podcast? Oh, sorry, podcast. What do you have on, what music are you listening to on your playlist right now? I reckon for the last seriously 10 years, always dance. Okay.
We listen to like heaps of different genres of dance music at work. We love playing music during the day. When I run, it would be like more high energy. When we're here, it would be like much more relaxed and, enjoyable. But like, yeah, I don't know. Music for me is like one of the biggest things. I hate working in the kitchen without it. Like, and even during the service, like we have a speaker that plays the same music as the guests are listening to in the kitchen. Like, just, I don't know, it's something about it. It really, just keeps the energy up and it's got a nice...
It sort of allows you to just focus on working. Yeah. I know that sitting at a desk all day, I'll often listen to like a 3-hour long ambient music track because it just allows me to focus and not get distracted.
Exactly.
Best purchase under $200 in the last year?
Good question. Oh, that's a really good question. Best purchase under $200 in the last year. You really got me with this one. Best purchase under $200. I'm going to say it's going to... easy. The fish-flavoured eggplant at Dainty Szechuan. Yeah.
If anyone here listening who's in Melbourne, you've got to go try it.
Yeah,
it's
they're opening in
amazing.
Sydney as well.
Are they?
Yeah.
So they've got one around the corner.
Yep, Turak Road.
And then they've got one in the city.
And they've got a couple in Box Hill.
Yeah, that's right.
I believe there's maybe... I've only been to the Turak Road one where I go very regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That $200 will get you 8 visits of fish-flavoured eggplant. But that is the best thing in Australia under $200.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've got IBS where I can't eat certain foods, but I'll put up with it just to have that eggplant. It's fucking beautiful.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's just not...
But your mouth goes numb completely after.
So good. But I don't find it that it's necessarily spicy. It's just the texture and the actual dish itself. It's just something, it's so Moorish and it's so good. Yeah. It's like nothing else.
Is there anything that you believe to be true that people often disagree with you on? Like one insight or what seems obvious in life to you, not so obvious to others?
I think like you've always got to have like something more happening. Like you can't.
Okay.
Like you've always got to be doing something that's like you can't stop. Like even with Atlas, like we've got new projects that are coming around this year, next year. Like we've just got to keep going. Like some people might say,
so always looking at something else.
Like make sure like we're going to get Atlas to a certain level, and then we continue to do other things. Of course, like Atlas is and always will be the flagship of our brand, and the most important thing for me is just that like we're developing menus and stuff with it, but there's always something more you can be doing. Yeah. And it could be something simple. It might even be like trying to cooking dinners for certain events, or maybe getting involved with like even some charity events, whatever it is, even new concepts, new anything, but always something more.
Yeah. And last question: if you had to gift one book to someone, if you had to give a book as a gift every Christmas for the next 20 years, what would it be?
Oh, what's it really?
Like what's something that sort of really changed your perspective of something that you've always really valued?
What book? I'd even like it wouldn't be the. This would just be something that I've read recently, and I don't know if it's necessarily the book that I'd give, like forever. But I would say I read the In and Out Burger book.
Oh, really?
Very recently, and I think that that book has one. It's an amazing story about a family who created a business that's got like a cult following, like no other fast food restaurant.
Oh yeah,
anything like In and Out, and
they opened a pop up in Sydney recently, didn't they?
Yeah, the other day, and it was just they were rammed. Like it was like, and anyway, but I think there's a lot of great lessons in that book about like treating they call them, not instead of staff, they call them associates, and they treat them with so much respect, and then like just how they grew, and like I think the main lesson from that book is that you need to like just stay true to yourself and maintain your standards, and that is just however that anyone interprets what is in between those pages, the story I think is just incredible.
Yeah. Well, look, Charlie, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy boy, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks. Cheers. Thank you for making it this far. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you leave us a review and head to neuralle.com/podcast to learn about our prizes, show notes, and gain priority access as a cognitive insider. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or Twitter. It's just @Neuralle, Neuralle. Until next episode, thanks for listening.